Hi, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Russ.
And we are
The Secret Sauciers.
Welcome to another episode of our show. We're
Fantastic episode, by the way.
Yes, and we're so glad you came back. And you probably came back because you found that what we're talking about is different. We're talking about the personal journey and the personal lessons learned that creates the greatest impact inside a company, inside a business. And Russ, we believe that's the secret sauce.
Absolutely. It's part of the culture, who we become from our experiences and our transformation in life is really about what it is,
and it's
and
that
how it amplifies to the community.
It does, and into the business. So it's with great pleasure that our wonderful guest today, we've dragged him here kicking and screaming, is Merle Riepe from Solve. Merle, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience and tell them a little bit about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an organizational psychologist by training and been doing consulting. Yes, doctor.
Okay, all right.
No one actually calls me doctor. I can't even get my kids to call me doctor. They don't even believe it. They're like, "You're not a real doctor, Dad." Born and raised in the Midwest from Omaha originally, and ventured out to San Diego for grad school and spent 4 years out there, which is a great place to hang out and go to grad school.
San Diego's nice.
Yeah, and then moved back to the Midwest for a decade, joined a consulting firm there, moved down to the Valley in Phoenix 4 years ago as part of that firm, and then just a couple of years ago had the opportunity to go out on our own. So we, part of our division within that firm, we were able to take it out and start up Solve. And so Solve's focus is really, our vision is to improve society's relationship with work. So
That's a big statement.
It's a huge statement.
We can't do it by ourselves.
No.
By the way, he's trying to tackle it with big companies. He's got utilities as clients. This is not, he's going into little, he's trying to make that statement become true inside the reality and the culture of, this is fair, of large organizations.
Yeah. The only thing I would add is we, because it's not me alone.
No,
so,
I didn't mean, I'm sorry. He's got, how many people do you have?
We're up to 10 now total.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it's primarily a staffing, recruiting, or how does that fit into the model where it's community based?
Yeah, he gets
Very
that
good
question
question.
all the time.
All the time, yes. So for us currently, the areas that we really focus on, number one, hiring the right people. Because it all starts, if you hire the right people, the rest of it takes care of itself in most cases.
Hire the attitude, train the skill, kind of.
Exactly. So we're able to assess the attitude before that person comes into place. So we're not a recruiting firm. I always say, I use the comparison like dating. Recruiting is like Match.com, right? There's a whole lot of volume. We're trying to match it up.
Right.
We're like Meet the Parents. So we're kind of more towards the end.
I like that.
And the very final piece of it.
Okay, so
Is this a circle of trust?
This is, that's all right. I'm watching you, Paco.
Yeah. So the reality is, you had this opportunity to work in a firm, understand the corporate environment, and so how did you see yourself? Was this a plan to get here, or was this a strategy, or did you kind of like evolve into it?
I would say I evolved into it. I was fortunate enough through both positive and negative experiences during college. I was a psych major, and so my very first internship was in the Lincoln Regional Center, which is basically a lockdown ward for people who are put there by the courts that claim, schizophrenia, bipolar, things like that. So I went 3 days a week. Worked with those folks, and I tell people, it was very challenging. It was very stressful. I tell people, it was kind of like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but without the comedy.
Yeah.
And as a very empathetic person, I knew that I could not take that career because I would identify too much with that, and it would be too much on my person, on my soul, on my nature to do that. So that was a great learning. It was a really negative, well, it wasn't a negative experience, but it was a stressful
It was.
experience to know.
I always say that you have an experience, good or bad, it changes you, right?
Well, or at least it makes you understand what you're willing to put up with and what you're not. And that alone is
What you love,
that
right?
alone is a lesson learned,
Yeah.
right? You know, the more we refine our goalposts in life, the more clarity we have, and the more clarity we have, the more dangerous we become in the best way, right?
In a very good way, yeah.
Right? So, I mean, so was there anything out of that experience that you, or lessons learned that you took with you forward into Solve? Or was there anything maybe from a previous experience growing up that, I guess what I'm asking you is, what are those things inside you that you think impacted your ability to grow this company so quickly? Because, I mean, you're only here 4 years. You put up this shingle, and you got now big clients. I mean, this has happened pretty quickly for you. I mean, a lot of people, it takes a long time. You know, what's tell us that story. What is that?
Yeah, I think for me, it's hard to explain. It's this balance between being ultra competitive, particularly on the inside, yet being really patient and understanding that relationships take time, especially in our business. We're not selling watches.
Right.
A lot of times this is a 2-year or 3-year type of engagement of just getting to know the person before they say, you know what, I trust you enough to bring you into the organization and help you with our people problems or the things that we're struggling with. So for me, it's always that what's next, how do we, figure out who are those people that we're talking with. And that competitiveness came for me at a very young age. So I played college athletics. I played basketball, Division III for like a year. I wasn't a premier athlete by any stretch of the imagination. However, the story goes a bit before that specifically in high school, I had a coach who was not a very positive influence, and would actually, at one point in front of the team, I remember this in the locker room, and shared with me that said specifically, "You'll never play basketball again competitively beyond high school." And so I took that as though, like, well, I'll show you. Like the minute anyone kind of tells
that
me
could
that
also
I
have
can't
the
do
opposite
something,
effect on someone.
It could. I was, for a number of different reasons, I was always a bit mature as a kid. I mean,
You're a bit mature as an adult.
well, thank you. So growing up, my mother had multiple sclerosis. And so and basically since the age of 5, she was bedridden. And there were times where we had one caregiver, Peggy, on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, who was there the entire time, like a surrogate mother. I mean, just a really great salt of the earth type of woman. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we probably, in the 12 years that my mother needed care, we probably had another 12, 15 people that alternated on those Tuesdays and Thursdays. And in some instances, they wouldn't show up. So I would, especially once I got to be about 10 years old, which is crazy because that's like my kid's age now. I would hook up the feeding tube. I would give my mother medicine. I could, in some sense, I was kind of the caregiver for my mother for some period of time. So for me, and it never felt like anything. People would give me looks or things like that.
Was it your normal?
It was my normal. It
Yeah.
was my normal. And for me, it just, I loved her. I felt like, hey, I can do these things. So if I can help and care for her, I will.
Did that obviously impacted you, obviously occupationally? You wanted to understand people better. You wanted to help people.
Always.
Right?
Always.
I mean, your default is you want to impact people's lives. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And you have a lot of empathy as well.
Yeah, sometimes too much.
Which-
Strength overdone.
Yeah, yeah. And so with that as a foundation, and now helping others, what mindset do you have in terms of how you approach the job? Being competitive and empathetic is sometimes a challenge to get in that middle ground, and where you need to push the boundaries. Only you have to be careful around who you're talking to, how you talk to them, and you want to be kind and generous. Only you also want to be competitive and get things done. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, I think I think there's a certain extent of truth to that, and then I also think, I mean, for me, maybe it's just with a little bit of age and confidence that I'm less cautious with how I respond or the way that I approach, because for me anymore, it's not about winning the business. It's more about making sure the connection's right. Because I know if I say things or do things that are inauthentic, just like if any of our people that maybe we're interviewing and executives of saying, be yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone says that,
Which
but
is
it's
what I was
truly,
explaining to you before the
Be
show.
yourself.
I'm like, forget about that there's cameras on. Let's just have a conversation.
Yeah, because for me, it's otherwise I mean, we've seen people move across the country and they displace their families for a job that they think they want, but they never really even analyzed it to come back and say, oh, like these people that I'm going to be working with are so different than me that I'm not going to be happy. It's almost like forcing yourself into a relationship because your parents want it, or for doing something other than you. So for me,
been the American way for so long. We want to make a nice living, and that will bring us happiness. But that's the disconnect. Is that just because you're making a nice living in a place that isn't an authentic fit for them or for you, or either or.
I chased the American dream till it became a nightmare.
Yeah. Well,
Right?
I think many
That's what you're
people
talking
have.
about. I mean,
So if you had one thing that you think changed inside of you in this journey now that you're in business or prior to that you can speak about, that change is positively, that you had to call yourself out on, that you had realized about yourself, whether it was a habit, good or bad, whether it was
Or a roadblock.
a realization or a limiting belief. What was that, and how did you come to that realization, and then did it have an impact in your life, in your business?
Yeah. I mean, several are popping into mind here.
We just need one.
I know, right? So gosh, I think for me, in the self-limiting belief, and at least for me, is there's this thing called imposter syndrome, and it's that sense of when you're giving people advice and things like, you're like, why the heck are they listening to me? Like, what am I doing? You kind of question everything back to say, why am I unique or why am I different? And there's it's that little voice that's kind of in.
And they're
in your
relying
head.
on you so much, right? And you're like, am I, is this real? Like,
Yeah.
Well, because that's interesting. You should say that. So I'm a former environmental scientist, and so I would be asked sometimes to go into the courtroom to be an expert, provide expert witness or some whatever expertise, and they call you in, and you're like, the expert, and I'm like, I don't know anything, like in my
went to
head,
school
it's
for
like,
some years,
I got 2 graduate degrees, I mean, I work in the profession, but I know people that are have way greater expertise than me in certain areas of this. I mean, so you're so right. It's, I think for me, so much about life is just owning who you are, believing, and it's that we know, but we don't own it.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between the
There is a
knowing
big difference.
and the owning of it.
Yeah.
So is that what you're saying? So
Yeah.
so what do you own? Did you learn to own? And what did that have an impact? And what was that?
Yeah, I think to your point, it's that you don't need to be the best, like the one best, because there's so many folks out there, and that if you always strive for that more, you'll never really enjoy enough, because there will always be something else out there that you can.
I learned
can
that
get
that
the hard way.
towards,
I learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if for me, it's saying that okay, the economies of scales. There's so many organizations and folks that need help out there that. The competitiveness isn't like, oh, we need to beat company X or we need to bury them and make them go bankrupt or anything like that. Some of the best relationships that I've had that have helped grow are competitors, and we call kind of this collaboration. So it's like we collaborate on something.
Co-opetition.
Co-opetition, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it like there's opportunities, and so much of it is really around education
Yeah.
and building the market versus trying to compete
You know,
for that
that's
small.
such a
That's a
good
good-
point to
that-
our
that's a
audience.
great point. Yeah.
Because, you know, one of the big lessons I learned in life was, when I was very young, I knew who my competitors were. And I don't want to say I viewed them as the enemy, but they were I'm very competitive. I viewed them as my fierce competitor. Well, you know what? Over the course of my life, I turned a competitor in the same industry into a partner in going after a huge project, which we together won and figured out how to divvy it up.
Yeah.
And
Competition.
it, you know, everything is perspective. Being competitive by nature is good, but I assure you that your competitor could be your best friend if you learn how to navigate through that. Some people are not open to it. They're not. They will never be open to it.
Yeah.
But some are. So that was one of the big lessons learned in your life. Was that limiting belief and owning it?
Yeah, it is. It's taking ownership of, you know, what I'm doing is good work. I'm helping folks, and for me, it was looking at what are my values, and for me, it's, you know, my families, my friends, and having some success. And so for me, it's looking at, well, what is that definition of success?
Well, I was just going to ask you,
How
what
do
is
you define success?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
What's the vision for Solve?
Oh gosh, so those are kind of two different questions.
They are.
Because one's more of a personal
They are.
one. You know, for me, the definition of success is, in a very broad sense, it's being happy, and sometimes it's, well, how do you define that? And so for me, it kind of comes and goes. I don't evaluate it every single day, but when I think about how happy am I, sometimes I'll do something as easy as an old pocketbook. I know most of us are connected to our phones, but taking a pocketbook and then for each calendar day, at the end of the day, go in and I'll write just a happy face. So I'll use the emojis, right, like my kids would do. And then at the end of the month, I can look back and say, gosh, you know, I thought I was having kind of a crappy month, but when I look back on it, it was really like
That's
two
a great
crappy
tip.
days.
That's a great tip.
That's a great
And looking through that, said, oh, okay. So that for me is happiness. You know, for me, it's family. It's making sure that I'm putting my kids first, my loved ones first, that I'm there for them, that when I do travel, which can be quite a bit, that I'm traveling on days that maybe they don't have things going on, so I can go to their concerts, I can
Right.
go hang out with them at
Activities,
lunch
yeah.
and stuff like that. So those are the ways that I define success, if you will. And to answer your question of where's Solve going, we're still figuring that out. You know, that's a very
It's a journey.
it is.
It's
It
not
is a journey. Like, we're not set out today to say we want to be the next X corporation with 500 employees, you know, $10 billion or
Right.
what. Because for me, things change so frequently. So for me, it's my goal is to sprint to opportunities and then walk from there. So it's like trying to catch as many shooting stars or find things you can, and then take patience and really say, is this the right thing? Does this align with our vision? Are these people ones that are going to really connect in with our culture? And if we find those opportunities, we're going to take advantage of them and move forward, but it's not growth for growth's sake. Because growth doesn't necessarily mean that you're happier, that you're more profitable, or those types of things. You can have a very profitable business with 10 employees and have a lot of balance and happiness, or you can try and grow it and put in 120 hours and maybe
Well, and
lose some of those other perspectives.
And I think it goes back to what you do very well is relationships. You know, the wins are also the relationships that you can foster and generate and build over time. Because those are really, to me, that's successful is how can I build healthy relationships that we can work together and help each other
Yeah.
along the way.
So I'm sure you've heard this before, Merle, but look, I know you, and now I feel like I know you better. It just happens to be some cameras that are rolling. You're actually the kind of person that I would choose as a friend, and I'm sure you've heard this before, that you're a pretty wise man, because happiness is such a delicate thing, and what I learned in life is you have to move towards it. And you have to make it a part of your consciousness, because otherwise, if you just wait for the day that it'll come to you, you may be waiting a very, very, very long time. And I've mentored a lot of people, and one of the things I told, somebody came to me, and he was super successful, and he was telling me about his family life and his marriage, and I said, I can't help you. He said, what do you mean you can't help me? I said, you need to fix home. I said, if you don't get home fixed, either fix it or move on, then you're never gonna, this is just gonna be meaningless, absolutely meaningless. So what you said about family and friends, I cannot stress to you enough, as a business owner, as a human being, home life is unbelievably important. Know it. So I thank you for that. That is incredibly valuable. So if our audience wants to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me either by email, which is Merle, M-E-R-L-E, @solvetalent.com, or give me a call, which is 480-563-2615.
And how would they get in contact with you, sir? I mean, I don't know why they would, but in case somebody...
In case somebody wanted to. Just contact me, russ@adoracreative.com.
It's very simple, isn't it? And I'm Andrew Kolikoff, and I live my life with joy, and my mission and purpose is to impact people's lives, and I do it in my work. I'm a scientist turned business development guy. And you can contact me on LinkedIn, Andrew Kolikoff, Kolikoff, or of course you can always reach me in email, and it's my name, Andrew@kolikoff.com. So that's another episode, Russ. You, sir,
Thank
were
you,
a
Merle.
great
Appreciate
guest.
it.
We are very appreciative of you coming today, and so long. Please come back. We will bring you another great guest. And Russ, any final words?
Enjoy the day.
Enjoy the day. Hi, I'm Andrew,
I'm Russ.
and we are the
Secret
Secret Sauciers,
We're here to bring you valuable information that can help you move your life forward.
and your business forward. And those realizations come from within you, and we're sharing that with you through our interviews with executives. So please tune in.
Subscribe to the channel and join us weekly.
Thank you.